Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. And now on Putin-Trump phone conversation will our ears. Tuesday marks yet another important day in the US-Russia negotiations framework as American President Donald Trump is about to talk to Vladimir Putin. It's going to be their first direct conversation following several meetings of high-ranked US, Russian and Ukrainian officials. To discuss the possible outcome of these talks, I'm joined now by Zarina Zabrisky, American journalist based in Ukraine. Good evening, madam. Thank you for being with us and for joining TVP World.
Well, thank you for having me, and let's talk about this very important conversation and these very important peace talks.
Exactly. Let me start by quoting Donald Trump, who says, we want to see if we can get this war, bring this war to an end. Maybe we can, maybe we can't, but I think we have a very good chance, says Donald Trump. Now, among the issues being certainly touched upon are the concessions from Ukraine, land, Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and, as quoted by Donald Trump, dividing up certain assets. So what's your understanding about what could be agreed upon?
Well, at this moment, Anna, I believe that anybody is claiming that they know the outcome of these negotiations would be really fantasizing. I don't believe anybody knows yet what's to come. We can only analyze and look at what the sides are saying and what the sides are doing. And these are two different things. We know that the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga said today that talks between Ukraine and the US in Saudi Arabia were constructive, frank, and detailed, and that the meeting restored mutual trust and strengthened diplomatic dialogue between Kyiv and Washington, possibly referring to the infamous by now meeting between the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump and Vice President G.D. Vance in the White House. And at the same time, the Ukrainian foreign minister emphasized commitment to peace and said that the 8-hour discussion focused on fair resolution to the war, and that Ukraine fully accepted the U.S. proposal without additional conditions and expects Russia to do the same. So what do we have on Russia's side? What is Putin's response? Well, he acknowledged the idea, but insisted on discussing implementations and claimed that Kyiv would use the pause for mobilization and rearmament. Then there was a long pause. During that pause, we had U.S. intelligence assessment, as published in the Washington Post, that Putin has not abandoned his goal to fully control Ukraine. And even if he agrees to a ceasefire, he's expected to use it for training and later blaming Ukraine for violating terms, so turning it around.
Exactly. We're talking here...
Please go ahead.
Yes, but we are talking here about three possible partners: Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. However, there's also a fourth one. A significant number of countries are willing to provide peacekeeping troops in Ukraine in the event of a peace deal with Russia. That's according to a spokesperson of Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who said that on Monday. Also, French President Emmanuel Macron says it is up to Ukraine and Europe to decide whether European troops will enter the game. So it's, of course, a very delicate play between US and Europe, but when should the Europeans take a more proactive stance?
Well, that's for anybody to guess. We know that this week is very important because on Thursday there will be more discussions. We know that UK Prime Minister Starmer pledged boots on the ground and planes in the air as part of this commitment. And we are to watch very carefully what is going to happen in Brussels and Europe on Thursday. We don't know. It's unclear whether Zelensky's team will attend this meeting, but we do know that this outcome will be linked to Ukraine's security planning for sure.
Now, the Russian conditions show Moscow does not want Ukraine peace. That's according to EU's top official Kaja Kallas, who said this today, but it's very much aligned with what Volodymyr Zelensky says. How does these words differ, and how much this different perspective affect the US-Russia talks?
Well, we know that Russia pretty much stands at its initial positions, demanding ironclad guarantees in any peace deal, and that's exclusion of Ukraine from NATO membership and Ukraine remaining neutral. And then we are following the remarks of the American politicians. And when we listen to them, we hear that they, in a way, juxtapose what they refer to as justice and the reasonable decision and the reality. There's this constant thread there that what we have and what we be in the United States agree to is not something that might seem as a reasonable compromise for Ukraine. And that, of course, referring to the land concession, to the four disputed regions, that is Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson areas. We also have a very hard debate on even what's going on in Kursk region, where the battles are going on.
Well, peace seems to be a key word in the U.S. officials' rhetoric, but what is actually the goal of the American negotiators?
Well, there are as many opinions as there are experts. At least that's what I hear. And many believe that Donald Trump is dedicated to bring peace for the sake of bringing peace, and even some claim getting his Nobel Prize. Others see the economic reasoning, and I believe that this has some grounds because removing sanctions, economic sanctions from Russia will certainly bring certain outcomes profitable to the United States and to the Trump administration. That might include oil and gas sanctions and such deals as Exxon Oil and Rosneft deal could be undusted. It's a $500 billion deal with drilling in the Arctic, in Canada, Alberta, and so forth. And that might be the reasoning. And the political outcome and the ratings are also important for Trump's administration because, as we know, Donald Trump has been consistently promising resolving the war in 24 hours and later in slightly longer period of time, but promises were made.
Yeah, right. Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, says Ukraine NATO membership is not on the table anymore. So I wonder what has been the reception of these words in Ukraine, and are the Ukrainians actually inclined to realistically renounce this option?
Well, I have been traveling the last week extensively. Usually I'm based in Kherson, which is a frontline city, and I know the opinions there very well. People are set on fighting back for their land, for their values, and for their aspirations. And that includes security guarantees, which for many include NATO membership. And I have been in Kiev the last few days, and right now I'm in Dnipro, and I see the same resolution. I also see a lot of confusion because this back and forth from the U.S. administration are certainly very unwelcome and very unsettling, frankly. We are now watching the scenes of destruction. And every night and every day, there are new strikes, heavy strikes on many Ukrainian cities, on civilians, from guided aerial bombs on Kherson and human safari drone attacks in Kherson, to Shahid drone attacks in Odessa and Kiev or Sumy. There was an attack in Chernihiv on a residential building, and so on and so forth. So, of course, Ukrainians who are targeted by daily and sometimes hourly strikes, such drastic changes in the U.S. policies bring a lot of disappointment and loss of faith in what was perceived as the major ally. And I have to admit that few people did not want to speak to me, give interviews on finding out that I was an American journalist. And that's the first time in 3 years that it happened. So as you could tell, the reaction is very intense.
So we are all watching closely the ongoing negotiations, but what if the negative outcome should appear? Should the agreement occur unacceptable for the Ukrainians? Do they take into consideration prolonging the war and fighting still for their independence?
Yes, I would say so. I spoke to many military and tough as it is and hard as the situation is, they all told me in interviews that they basically have no other option other than continue fighting. Most people believe that this is their land, that the Russian Federation is the aggressor, and that giving up the occupied lands is not an option. And that's pretty much what Zelensky is reflecting in his speeches, in his addresses. This is pretty much the will of Ukrainian people. Of course, Ukraine is a democratic society with people being very outspoken and expressing their opinions. And there are some, and in my estimation, it's a minority, who are so tired of destruction and war that they would call for some concessions, territorial concessions, that is.
Zarina Zabrisky, thank you so much for talking to us about the situation in Ukraine, as well as the hopes for the positive outcome, of course, of the Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump's conversation coming tomorrow. Thank you so much once again for joining us.
Thank you, Anna.
And thank you for watching this episode of World Talks. But please stay tuned to TVP World for more features and for more news.